Welcome to the Inter-VLAN routing lab. PCA and PCB are both in different subnets. One is in the 192.168.2, one's in the 192.168.3. In order for these to communicate, we need to have a trunk link between switch A and switch B, and switch A and a router. We're going to need a router basically because we've got different networks involved here. So without further ado, let's log on to switch A, and we're going to start a configuration on here. The interface range command works on most iOS versions for the 2950. There's a few problems we encounter as we go through this lab, and I thought I'd leave them in because you might encounter them when you're configuring it in the exam or when you're practicing this lab. So I've done interface range fast 0/1 space dash space 2, and I've turned interface 1 and 2 on switch A into trunking mode. We're going to need trunks because we're going to have multiple VLANs passing between the two switches and the switch A and the router. So I've typed the show interface trunk command now. Unfortunately, only fast Ethernet 0/1 is shown as trunking. So this is the first problem we've come across, and it says here in my call out that 0/2 should be trunking. So this could put you off. You could be troubleshooting on the switch all day and still not finding the issue. Now what I've done here is I've gone specifically into interface fast Ethernet 0/2, and I'll put that into trunking. Now this should have already happened because I did the interface range command, and this is what a lot of people might do to try and fix it. However, even though I've directly put that interface now 0/2 into trunking mode, when I do show interface trunk on switch A, it should still show you that the switch isn't trunking on that interface. So we could be a bit stuck here, but if you now log on to the router at the top, I'll change the host name to router A, router 1. Obviously I've already done that on the switches. So the router's at the top, router 1, and we're interested in fast Ethernet 0/0. So I've now shut that interface, which will obviously bring it up. Now on the 2950 the default encapsulation is .1Q. On the router though we need to hard code. So I've gone into interface fast Ethernet 0/0 and no shut, and now I've typed fast 0/0.2. So that is a sub interface, and the encapsulation I've chosen is .1Q, so that's the only encapsulation we can have for it to talk to the 2950. I'm putting this sub interface into network 192.168.2, and that is in VLAN 2. So now PCA can communicate with the router. We're going to do the same for the sub interface that we're going to put into VLAN 3. It's a very good habit to call the sub interface number the same as the VLAN number. So if it was VLAN 20, it would be 0/0.20. Okay, encapsulation .1Q space and then the VLAN number. Quite simple commands, so the more you do this lab, the more familiar it will be. And I'm putting this interface into the other network. Obviously you need a router to route between different subnets, which is the whole reason why we're doing this lab and the whole reason why we need a router. Let's go back onto switch A now. I've done a show IP interface brief, on the router, so you can see both interfaces are up. Now I'm back onto switch A, and I've done show interface trunk, and there you'll be very pleased to know that we can see both fast Ethernet interfaces are in trunking now. So we fixed the first problem that you may come across in the exam or when you're having a go at this lab at home. You'll come across these problems because sometimes you've got different versions of code, or you're using different interfaces to me, so it's handy to come across these sort of issues and then fix them. So we're going to configure the switch now. The access ports are where you're going to connect your laptops or PCs, and fast Ethernet 0/3. switch port mode access. That should be on by default. I think it's a good idea to hard code that if you're not absolutely sure that it's showing that on the switch. Switch port access VLAN 2, we'll put that port into VLAN 2. Now we're going to find a problem later on because of the version of code on this switch, but I'm going to leave that problem on there and we'll troubleshoot it later. But this is the correct command. The old-fashioned command was VLAN database and then adding a VLAN on that way. In the CCNA exam you'll have a new version of code, so you won't have to use old legacy commands. I'm now on switch B. Obviously to call it this, it's config T and then hostname switch B. So it's the right hand switch. We're going to put the interface fast Ethernet 0/1 into trunk in so it can communicate along the trunk with switch A. Switch port mode trunk is the command. Now I'm going to go to interface fast Ethernet 0/3, make that an access port, and then drop it into VLAN 3. So PCB will be in VLAN 3. Hypothetically, in fact, no, this should all work now, but sometimes we have issues, problems, different versions of code, as I mentioned. So PCA now should be able to ping PCB and vice versa. Now obviously you're going to need configurations on both PCs to put the IP addresses on those. I've done a show VLAN brief and on switch B, and I can see that fast Ethernet 03, third one down there, is in VLAN 3, which is perfectly correct. This is a handy command for troubleshooting. Show VLAN brief, or you can do show VLAN or show VLAN 3. Alright, I'll just show you on one of my LAN connections. I'm sure you know how to do this if you're doing CCNA, but I'm just going to drop my LAN interface on my PC with the correct IP address. You obviously need to do this on both your PCs or laptops or whatever you've connected to your switches. In the diagram I do show you how to do this with routers as well. If you're using routers you'll need a static route. So this is the PC on the right hand side, which is 192.168.3.2, and I've put a default gateway of 3.1, which is the fast Ethernet on the router. Alright, so I've logged on to router 1. Just going to do a quick check. I'll ping PC. There's the diagram there. It should be pinging 2.2 first, which is PCA. Give the interfaces 30 seconds to come up if you've configured this lab very quickly. So you can see I've pinged 2.2 there and nothing's happened. I've pinged it again and this time 4 pings have worked. Ping it another time and all 5 work. So it does take the interface on the switch 30 seconds sometimes to come up. This time I'm pinging PCB, which is 3.2, and that's worked straight away. Okay, so I'm logged on to PCA at the moment, and I'm going to do some pings from the command line on the PC. You just type run cmd to get the command line. So I'm pinging 192.168.2.1, which is the fast Ethernet interface on the router, and then 3.1 is the fast Ethernet in VLAN 3. That's worked fine, so that's good news. And now we need to see if we can ping across the trunk. So 3.2 would be PCB, and that's worked fine. I actually had a problem on this lab, so I want to go back onto switch A, which accepted the command.